Okay, Kathy, it's all yours.
Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing okay. Well, no, we do introductions first. I was thinking public comment first, but I'll go ahead and start. My name is Kathy Ostrand-Ponchin. I'm a member of the Human Rights Commission. My pronouns are she, her. I live in South Salem, and I will pass it to Tricarico.
Hi, my name is Tricarico. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I'm a resident of Ward 2, and I will pass it to Susan.
My name is Susan, and my pronouns are she, her. I live in South Salem, and I will pass it to David.
Hello, my name is David Reinhold. I'm a resident of Polk County, and my pronouns are he and him, and I'll pass it to Gretchen.
Hi, everybody. Gretchen Bennett, and pronouns are she, her, and I'm staff to the commission.
Thank you, everybody. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. Gretchen, do we have any public comment?
We do not. None submitted this evening.
Okay. So next is the approval of the minutes from the January 26th meeting. I don't know if folks have had a chance to look at those yet. I do have one question. I think, David, were you at the last meeting? I thought you were there, but it says that you were absent. I just want to make sure that's.
I was absent.
You were, okay, okay. I might be thinking of a different meeting then. Does anyone want to move to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, so those minutes are approved. Thank you. So moving on to our discrimination survey. It sounds like the class, Marianne Bradshaw and the class are on board to do another one this year. So they will start that in April. And from what I understand, will be invited to one of their classes in April to begin that process. And the students will do the design work primarily for what this survey looks like. But for anyone who maybe hasn't, thought it might be a good idea to go over some of the conclusions and recommendations from last year's survey, just to kind of refresh ourselves on where that ended up. And Susan, I don't know if you had a chance to look at that, because I don't think you were, as a new member of the commission, did you have a chance to look at any of the survey from before?
I glanced at it, but in all honesty, I can't say that I'm totally familiar.
Yeah, yeah. There were a couple of things. I don't know, Gretchen. I only have one screen here. Is it possible to share a screen, or should I just speak about the pieces of it that I wanted to kind of focus on tonight?
Kathy, it is possible to share a screen. I might need to make you a co-host to do that in case that's helpful. So let me do that right now.
Well, and I hope I know what I'm doing, because I have a lot of windows open and I don't want to share the wrong thing, but. Oh, there we go. So can you all, are you looking at my email as well, or are you just looking at the slide presentation?
I see a slide that says recommendations. I don't see anything else.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So this was, I believe this was the report that the students brought to us last year after they had analyzed the survey data. And I don't necessarily think we need to walk through it all, unless you would like to. I mean, I'm happy to do that. But what I think was really important is what the students' recommendations and conclusions were from the survey. Susan, would you like me to walk through it a little bit more closely? I won't read everything, but would it be helpful to just go through the slides?
Briefly, maybe, but I think just hitting the conclusions and the recommendations really would be the most helpful.
Okay, okay. So, I think we had like 800 people completed the survey.
Wow.
More than that started it, but it was distributed by paper and online. The paper copies were primarily distributed to the unsheltered population. And the students, I'll just kind of click through. The students analyze the data received as far as the age of respondents, the gender, race, ethnicity, whether they were a member of the LGBTQIA+ community. And so all that, really good data that they can, they have the ability in the data set to really go through and find out who responded. I think one of the recommendations of the students was at the next survey to find out ways where we can maybe distribute it more widely to get a more representative sample of respondents. And so I'm assuming that the students from, because we won't have the same students, obviously, the students from this class will look at what the prior class recommended based on their experience. And so let's see. Just trying to find the page. So the conclusions, okay, there we are at the very end here. A lot of the respondents had personally experienced discrimination. Half of them were recent and on grounds of housing status, gender, and race. Secondhand discrimination, had they witnessed it or heard of it, the majority had. And they are, again, were recent and on the grounds of housing status and race. So I think those are the two areas where really ripe for some sort of action to see what we can do to address that. Salem got pretty low scores. A third rated Salem 1 out of 5 for failing a lot of discrimination. The average rating was pretty low, between average and poor. People experiencing homelessness reported the most frequent discrimination, the lowest rating of Salem, and the lowest awareness of the Human Rights Commission. And that's one of our ongoing projects, is to think about ways that we can improve outreach to work with that community on increasing their awareness and helping with providing maybe some information about solutions. Okay, so the recommendations, and this is last year's students. So continue to reach out to people experiencing homelessness, and we've talked about that. Consider how to design the survey distribution to gather responses from a sample more representative of Salem. It's not a scientific survey. Obviously, we're not getting a sampling of that's truly reflective of the population, but I think that's something to look at. And then include questions that ask respondents for solutions, ideas to help ease or eliminate discrimination, or solicit ideas to create a more diversity, equity, and inclusive friendly city. Maybe questions for this. So if the students this year do add those questions, I think that's going to be an area for the Human Rights Commission to really be focusing on, is what are some things that we can be doing. Anyways, and then for the specific recommendations for the Human Rights Commission, carry on. Advise the city as the city looks inward at programs and work to repair public perception issues. Leverage social media to continue building awareness of the Human Rights Commission, and develop a plan to decrease discrimination for those currently experiencing homelessness. And so I just want to pause real quick to see, does anybody have any, thoughts or insights with last year's conclusions and recommendations that we carry forward in the work we're doing this year and working with the students this year?
Has anybody gone to, there's an organization called Salem for Refugees. And I know at one point I was helping a refugee family that had an apartment there. They were not getting renewed. And when we went to the place, the property management place, it was pretty clear that there was discrimination. Couldn't do much about it, but I'm wondering if we have spoken with the Salem for Refugees people to help them become aware, because there are a lot of folks that are engaged in working with refugee families coming in various aspects, and they're all volunteers. So they may not be aware if there are resources. And I was just wondering.
This is Gretchen. Susan, I'd be happy to respond to that. Yes, it's probably been a couple of years. I think it's pre-pandemic when I last spoke to the full gathering that included all of the volunteers. But I remember providing a presentation about how to access Human Rights Commission and ways to assist when a person has a question or concern of discrimination. And if my memory serves me, we were engaging the Fair Housing Council of Oregon as well, if I remember that correctly.
Cool.
I think it's been a while. I do have the opportunity to serve on a steering committee for Salem for Refugees in the area. And so I remain connected with them, but it's been a little while since we've done an HRC presentation. So that's a really good suggestion.
Well, and I realize just because I'm not aware of resources doesn't mean that everybody else isn't. So thank you. Yes.
Oh, of course. That's also, it can be really tough. I think it can be one of the challenging things, as you probably know, about whatchamacallit, when someone's lease or relationship isn't getting renewed, proving causality, I think, can be really tough. And
Yeah.
so that's a rough situation potentially. Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty clear in my mind that it would be almost impossible to prove. Yeah. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah.
I apologize. I lost my connection and had to to leave the meeting for a few minutes. Susan was asking me if we had worked with the Salem for Refugees, and briefly, I don't want you to repeat everything you said, Gretchen, but what, if you don't mind?
Yes.
No, of course. It's been a couple of years, but we did do a presentation from HRC to the full group, but that could be refreshed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But it does seem like that would be also a group to work with as far as distributing the next survey to find out what their experience is. I don't know that we necessarily, aside from the unsheltered population, I don't know what other groups we may have done outreach to last time around to get the survey out there. Gretchen, do you remember? I know it was on the website and there was emails, but I'm not sure what else was beyond that.
I think that the first and second surveys, I remember a distribution that went to organizations that work with people who identify with different community identities or protected classes.
Okay.
I don't recall that in the very last year. Some of you might. It's interesting to think about getting at that second bullet on the recommendation list about a wide representation. I remember one of the discussions that the students were having is if you focus in on respondents who may have a higher likelihood of having experienced discrimination, they had a category for how they talk about that as a type of survey. You know, there were different types of surveys, and it can bring important information and voices to the table, but it can also create a comment, like someone would be able to say, like, as you did earlier, it's not scientific, like it's not an automatic cross-section regardless of experience. Like somebody could say, well, the respondents are more likely to have experienced discrimination, therefore that broad conclusion of 50% of people have experienced discrimination is reflective of the respondents and not reflective of Salem. You know, so I remember over the years, students were analyzing the different ways of approaching how to reach out for respondents. And I think that's varied over the years. And I think if my memory serves me, the students didn't do group specific outreach this year. aiming at broader, but then there's also the challenge of you might be more likely to take it if you've experienced a situation than if you haven't. So there's all kinds of challenges, but I think this would be a great topic of conversation for the students and the professor, or you may have other thoughts too.
I
And
used,
Go ahead.
I used to teach survey research as part of the program that I did at George Fox. And that was always an issue that we raised, helping them understand that they needed a broad group to really survey if their results were going to be more valid. And I used to say, it's kind of like a pot of soup. If you dump the salt in on one side and somebody tastes that, it's going to be really salty. If they taste the other side, they're going to say it needs more salt. So the idea is that you get a broader range of respondents so that your results are more accurate. But it's never going to be perfect. Survey research just isn't. We do the best we can.
Right. And on the one hand, you want the results to be somewhat accurate and reflective of the community, but speaking for myself, you also want to hear about people's experience.
Exactly. You want to find out what needs improvement and where the problems are. Yeah. So the surveys are really doing both of those things in a different way. You want a broad perspective, but if you just ask folks that are comfortable and complacent, they're probably not going to have issues. If you talk to folks out on the street, there probably are.
Yeah.
So I like your friend.
He's normally not on camera because I had to switch to my phone. So he's quiet. So we're gonna meet with, we will meet with the class in April. And is there anything else we need to do as the task force to prepare for that, or is it a matter of supporting the students in what they come up with?
I think kind of similar to our previous meeting, Kathy, we kind of have to think about, what are the asks that we're making as the commission for the students, because we kind of come from two different lenses, right? Like the goal of the class and the teacher's goal is for the students to learn how to do surveys, right? So they're going to be pretty hyper-focused on the validity and the scientific method, and that's fantastic. Whereas we kind of are more focused on hearing the experience of people. So I think it's always a challenge to trying to find a balance between hearing as many people as possible and having their voice heard. But then since we are publishing it, we really want to make sure, and not like formally, but just sending it to the public, we do want to make sure that it's valid. So just kind of keep that in mind if you do show up to speak on behalf. That was kind of the interesting balance I observed. Because, and then also like we want to make some improvements to it if possible, but not get too far, because then we can't compare it to last year's survey. So that's another balance that can be a little challenging, but it's really just about, getting a similar survey out. And I would love to hear what this round of students says about the survey and how we get the outreach out there.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. And David, were you involved last time around? I was not. I didn't join the task force until after it had already been distributed.
Yeah, I was involved.
And do you have any suggestions or insight for the way to approach it this time around?
No, I think Tricarico hit most of the points.
Okay.
If we're trying to get the broader public involved, I know one of the newspapers did a report on the survey. Would they be willing to make an announcement about here's a time to take that survey and kind of direct them to a place to go?
Yeah, that would be great.
I just don't remember which paper it was.
I think it was the Salem Reporter, wasn't it?
I think so.
It was. And I think that it would be fine to see about inviting participation, from the media outlets to reach a broad group. The students might have something to say about that. I don't know if there's anything technical about that.
Okay. Yeah, anything else on that we can talk about ahead of time or before we meet with April, or should we just see what the students, what their thoughts are about proceeding?
Kathy, it's a great question. And the only other thing I can think of kind of builds on what Tricarico said about kind of thinking ahead to what you're hoping to accomplish, that because I'm sure that will be their question. Is there anything this year that's important to add, to change? What are you hoping to achieve? And it sounds like you're starting to coalesce around kind of some key points of not changing to the point that it's not comparable,
Right.
doing the best to have as valid a sample as possible, wanting to be able to hear people and hear their experiences and learn from them. It sounds like you're starting to coalesce around the answer to that question, but maybe continuing to think about that. I can reach out to the professor and try to see if we can have some dates. I'm not sure if she's at that point yet, but I'll try to get some clarity around it, if there's specific dates yet.
Okay. So do folks want to kind of think about that between now and, I think we've got one more meeting, possibly one more meeting between now and when we would meet with the students. So maybe we can talk about that next time, is what are those specific things, or if anything new comes to mind that we haven't touched on tonight.
Gretchen, are we going to meet with Professor Bradshaw before we meet with the students, or are we just going to meet with her when we meet with the students?
Great question. When I talked with her, she spoke of kind of following a similar schedule. So I imagine that could create the opportunity to visit with the professor in advance. If my memory serves me, we've done that before.
Yeah.
Do you have any preferences on that?
I think it might be helpful, since like half of us have only done this once and half of us are new, to have that meeting. Like if next month we could meet with her and then April we can meet with the students, because she'll be able to frame some of the like challenges and restrictions that I just don't remember.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you remember, David, there's a lot of stuff that I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But like, I don't think about it because I'm not a college professor in this course. So that was really, really helpful to kind of prepare by meeting with her ahead of time. So if she has the ability to come, that would be super great, or we can put her early on the agenda. She has limited time, but I would love to talk with her again.
I agree. That'd be very helpful
I think
to
so.
have that conversation first.
Mhm.
Very good. I'm happy to reach out. And that might relate to the next thing on the agenda when we get to it, is dates.
Well, that it does. So our next scheduled meeting is March 23rd. And Gretchen will not be here, but there are other staff at the city who can fill in for her, but I will also not be here that date. So we were going to talk about if we wanted to maybe choose another date in March. I mean, I hate to, with, especially in the midst of the survey, to have to do too much rearranging at this point in time, but are folks available? I don't know if you've got your calendar. Would you be available to meet the Wednesday before that on the 16th, or do we want to have a variety of dates to choose from?
But 16th should work for me.
It works for me.
David, do you know if you would be available on the 16th?
I was just looking at my calendar. I'm not available.
Okay. Are there other dates in that week that would work?
What about that Tuesday?
March 15th?
Mhm.
Tuesday would work for me.
Me as well.
Yeah, that one won't work for me either. The 15th and 16th, I'm tied up.
Okay,
Every day, the rest of that week, I'm fine. It's just those 2 days.
How about March 17th, which is a Thursday?
I can't do that one. I have a standing meeting that day.
And we leave on the 18th for spring break, which takes me out the whole next week.
Okay, actually, wait, if we kept our standard meeting time of 7, I could make Thursday work.
Oh,
on the 17th?
Yeah. I was thinking 6 because that's LGBTQ, but I just remembered it's 7.
Susan and David, does that work for you at 7 o'clock?
It works for me.
Yeah.
Let's do that then, 7 o'clock on the 17th.
Isn't that St. Patrick's Day?
Yes.
It is.
Everybody better wear green.
if the professor, do you want to come up with an alternate just to increase the chances of the professor being available? Would that make sense?
Yeah, what about Monday, the 14th? Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong calendar. Don't listen to me.
No, that is a Monday.
Oh,
That's a
thank
city,
goodness. Okay.
that's a city council meeting though, and I've got
Oh,
there's a homelessness topic on the agenda, so I don't think I'd be able to do it unless you wanted to meet like from 4:30 to 5:30, because the council starts at 6, for example.
That could work.
I could do that.
I could do that as well.
So it would be either the Monday at 4:30 or the Thursday at 7, depending on the professor's schedule.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can
Okay.
do that.
Great. I'll reach out and try to get back to you right away, so you don't have to hold both those times.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Of course.
Now, do we want, as a group, do we want to come up with a list of questions for the professor now, or do we want, because I don't know that we won't have another meeting between now and then, or we can send our ideas to Gretchen and have her circulate them. We wouldn't have the chance to discuss them between now and then, but
Yeah, I mean, I think we could send the questions to Gretchen. I mean, Marion did a really good job of kind of giving us an overview and setting the stage, and then we had a pretty natural discussion out of that.
Yeah.
But if you have any burning questions, like, yeah.
okay. Okay, that works for me.
Cool.
So I think that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the unsheltered communities. I have a couple of questions for Gretchen. Do you know the status of the Chapter 97 update? Has anything changed since the last time we met?
Yes, they are working on it. We were discussing a draft and discussing capacity, of supporting people who have situations. So it is being actively worked on. And then I think that soon I should be hearing back with a draft that I know the commission was interested in being able to have a chance to review. And I think noted some people with lived experience to provide some reviews. So I don't think it's going to be too long before I'm offered a draft to bring back to you all and get your feedback around how to expand that table so that we have the opportunity to weigh in while it's in draft stage.
Okay. And then the other question I had, I think we talked last time, or if I remember correctly, Tricarico asked about the frequency that we're able to send out things to the city's social media outlets.
Yes, I do have an update on that. I checked in with my colleague who runs the communications. Communications is part of her portfolio at the city. And we don't have a precise number or volume, but the city just needs to seek balance with all of the other priorities and initiatives on its plate. You know, you can think of the broad nature of the cities. So we would have to pay attention to not suggesting an overabundance, but absolutely we can err on the side of suggesting content and offering information. And they just may have to say, hey, yeah, that works right now. Or no, we really have to use the channels in these areas right now, but we'll circle back. If it's not time sensitive, it could be kind of an iterative discussion, but just paying attention to the volume. And then the other, I asked for like, what else? What should we be thinking about to help us understand? And she said that they'll be looking for a nexus with the mission and the vision and the values of the city's strategic plan, looking for citywide value when we use the city's communication channels. So having that in mind, and the city's strategic plan is on the internet, and I could also share that with you if you want, but there's several natural nexus points. You know, there's language around inclusion and accessibility in the value statements. Addressing homelessness is a top priority in the city's strategic plan. So I think you'll find a number of moments of intersection.
Okay.
But that's what I learned as I kind of clarified. So I know it's a little bit kind of maybe iterative, but I mean, I think it's just, there is that flexibility. I mean, that's just kind of the nature of it.
So if there are communications that we want to put out there, it sounds like there are opportunities to do that through the city.
Yes.
It's just a matter of what and when. Okay.
Yes. Yes. And we have a number of channels. You're all probably familiar. For example, there's an email that goes out Friday to people who subscribe to the Friday, I think it's called Community Connections. And it's a pretty broad email that brings in a number of topics, and there's links off of that. There's, of course, the web pages themselves and news stories on the web pages. We do news releases that are distributed via something called Flash Alert to the media sources that are out there. And we have comprehensive listings there. We have social media in Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And there's also a Spanish only Facebook that's supported by the city as well.
Okay.
So I think at least a good guess at examples of the channels that we have. I think that's everything.
Okay. And last time we talked about the power of story and putting out some, if there are particularly moving stories or that we wanted to share with permission, of course. And I'm wondering, with the timing of the news survey coming up, and also with not knowing, with the timing of the Chapter 97 changes, if we want to be thinking ahead, we're not, maybe the timing is we look to do something after this next survey comes in. I don't know. What are your thoughts about the timing of communication specific to the unsheltered communities?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't know. Maybe we can think about that all together. My mind jumps to a question about video. We do have a video on the commission's homepage right now, and that's one place to land videos.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of, there's also a partnership with CC Media, and that's another avenue or strategy, is the different ways in which connecting with CC Media is an option. There's, like, I was recently a guest on a program called Insight, and that's another way to get information out to an audience. Short videos are shared on social media. And so I imagine that's a tool. So my mind is just trailing off on videos. Timing, it's a great question.
I'm hearing that there's a lot of options.
Oh, Oh, I thought of
Yeah.
another, maybe what you're asking is, so for example, if we were able to predict if and when council codified the changes to chapter 97, it would be great to pair that announcement with a video, for example, that helps have a story that helps explain the why or the importance. Would that be
Something, yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily thinking of a video, although that would be one way to do it, but I think it would be important. I think it would be good to put something out and try and time it with the changes, assuming that they are made, about the why and the background, and maybe start that way.
Yeah,
Susan,
so
or-
it would make
go
sense
ahead.
to start gathering that then. Like, are there quotes from the last or the current discrimination
Mhm.
survey? Is there short vignettes from people to share their story? Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think I'm starting to unpack what you're saying.
Well, I think we can, because we're so close on getting the next survey out there, there might be more opportunity to gather those pieces that you're mentioning, the stories and things.
Wonder if we could use the testimonies that we got from the surveys from our unsheltered respondents as a way to not only like raise awareness about the survey, but also some of the experiences our unsheltered folks go through. So we can kind of like link it all together of, this is why we're making the amendments to chapter 97, because we have, you know, firsthand reports of our unsheltered neighbors experiencing this discrimination. And like, this is why we do this survey, you know, more to come or whatever,
Mhm.
because we're planning on doing this again in the spring. You know, like sign up here for updates or whatever it is that we want to call people to action to do, because I know they like it when we do calls to action. To try to gain some interest in the next survey iteration while also still utilizing the past survey to highlight the responses we got.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Too.
I'm trying to think. I know with the testimonies, do you have specific things you're thinking of, Jacarrico, as far as the testimonies and the comments? I know we heard from the students specific comments. I'd have to go through the actual comments from the survey again to see what's on there. I'm just wondering if anything sticks in your mind that you're remembering.
Gretchen, did we have some comments from the actual respondents? Like, I feel like there was a box at the end where people could kind of talk about stuff. And I remember the students being especially moved by those comments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
And hopefully that's one of the links that I sent recently. I tried to include all of the links. So you should have in my email, there's a link like, and that should be in there if I'm not mistaken. You could see maybe what jumps for you as particularly poignant. The one that I think we've all quoted it during the year, is the person who said, I need you to stop it. Like, I don't want you to make me feel, something to the effect of, I don't want you to make me feel better about it. I don't want you to offer me a resource. I want you to pivot elsewhere and just make it stop happening. You know, I think that one jumped at quite a few of us.
Yeah. Well, I'd be willing to take a shot at kind of an outline of what I think that would look like. And I could send it to Gretchen and have her to get feedback. I mean, you know, at least to have something to look at. It's easier to look at something than to come up with it. So, but I like that. I was thinking that maybe we wouldn't do anything till after the survey, but I like the idea of putting something out there ahead of time to get people ready for it and thinking about it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just feel like with awareness, you gotta tell them you're doing it, and then do it and tell them that you did it. You know, so it's like the more we can do that, the more we can get some buzz around it.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll try and get something. I mean, it'll just be a real basic outlined out so that maybe we could look at it the next time when we meet that second week of March. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you, Kathy.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
If there is a change to chapter 97, how many other cities in Oregon have that change? Were we one of the first ones, or?
None. We're one of the first in the nation. There's like 2 or 3 other cities in the United States that are doing that change.
So then it'll be very newsworthy. So should we help develop like a media packet for them?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Mhm.
That's a very good point, David. It also puts us ahead of the state of Oregon because the state doesn't have this right now in state code. That's one of the things that
Right.
we've been thinking through. I could connect in with our communications team and ask their thoughts about what a media packet like that could include, but I also would love input from this group on that. That's a great question.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to say, like, why Salem? And I think it would be interesting to look at some of the statistics of unsheltered folks around the state and around the nation, because I know that there's a perception that Salem has an exceptionally high percentage of unsheltered people, and I wonder how true that is. But I also know there was, I think maybe Amelia shared it with us. There was like a national survey. Maybe I just saw it. I don't know. There's like a national survey of like bias, and it was like the top like worst places to live, and we were like on the top 10.
Really?
I know. I was like, I think it was specifically around racism. So I'd be curious if there's a similar survey around like unsheltered folks across the nation, like which places are impacted the most. Because I feel like that would be like, this is why, like we do have a lot of people, we do. And I think that's naturally because a lot of the services are in this area. So people come here seeking services.
Mhm.
But I think that would be kind of a good talking point to have for whoever ends up talking to the media of like, yes, this is a real problem, beyond just what you see when you walk through downtown or whatever. It is a real problem that we're facing in Oregon. And maybe even like talking points about rising home prices and like how nuts the real estate market, like it's just, there's so many things that contribute to it, right?
Mhm.
You're right about folks coming here for services. I think about all of the institutions that are in Salem. And when families, for instance, when somebody goes to prison and a family moves here to be close to their family member, they may not have resources that they had back home. So they need help here. And we do have a phenomenal amount of institutions here in Salem that I think skew things a little bit.
Mhm.
And we need to be aware of that.
That's a good point. And being the capital city too, I know, yeah, that I think that has, with the capital city, there's a lot of, like you said, there's the state hospital, there's the prisons, there's all sorts of stuff that ends up here. And I think is that what you're saying, Susan?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it was like even written into the Constitution that, so many of these services have to be in Marion County, so the legislatures can keep an eye on them. But that really does mean that there is more of a burden on Salem because of that issue.
Yeah, the other thing that's interesting is that we have a pretty big presence of like nonprofit and religious organizations that are really dedicated to serving our unsheltered folks. And there are other cities in Oregon, I don't remember who, I won't shame and blame, who are actually trying to make it illegal for churches and nonprofit organizations to do free meals for people, because they basically were like, well, we don't want to attract unsheltered people, so we're going to make it so that there aren't services available here to them. Right.
Mhm.
So
And
like, people are actively trying to do the opposite of what we're doing.
Exactly. And there's a lawsuit that has been brought against those wonderful folks.
Good.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, how terrible to want to provide food for folks who need it.
No, especially when like I am not a Christian, but I'm pretty sure that's one of the big tenets is like helping other people. Like
That's a biggie.
sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Feed my sheep and all that. Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
I think we've got some good ideas. So yeah, Gretchen, if you could find out maybe from staff at the city what a media packet would look like. I mean, communications is not my area of expertise. I mean, I can put together an outline of some information, but I will need help with the rest. And then we can meet again in a few weeks and hopefully get something put out before this survey goes out.
Very good.
So,
I will.
Good. Okay. Anything about on that topic, the unsheltered communities, before we move on to the communication, our monthly communication plan? That's another thing too. So we're talking about putting out some communications about the unsheltered, but then we have the monthly annual communication plan with different events each month. February is Black History Month, and there was an email that went out earlier about that. March for our plan, we've got Women's History Month and Transgender Day of Visibility, which is March 31st, I believe. And so do we want to have put something out for maybe both of those? Thoughts about that and what might it look like? I don't know how, I don't know how detailed or how much information we want to have, or it could just be a real simple acknowledgement that we are recognizing these events. And does anyone want to take a shot at putting together some information that might go in a
It was Trans Day of Visibility, and what was the other one?
Women's History Month?
Oh, okay. I could potentially put something together for Trans Day of Visibility.
And Gretchen, since that is a specific day, would it be possible to have that go out on March 31st?
Yeah, that's very doable.
Gretchen, can you send me an email reminding me to do that? Because I will not remember it.
Yes.
Thank you.
I also want to thank Kathy. Kathy wrote the piece. I hope you don't mind my saying, Kathy, you wrote the piece for February, and I so appreciated it.
I was glad to put out something. I think there's so many possibilities of things that we can do, and I think I might do it differently. I might do it differently next time, but I think it's important to get something out. So, and does anyone else want to maybe gather up a short communication about Women's History Month?
I can't do it right now. I'm sorry.
Okay. Let's see if I can.
It's probably okay to just do the one. I know those were
Yeah.
offerings, but if you wanted to, you could just lean into
Yeah.
that one or.
Yeah, I don't think we have to do one for necessarily everything on the list. But I think it's nice to have at least something on a monthly basis. But at the same time, if we're going to have something going out about the survey, that might be enough on our plate for at least this month.
Yeah, and then perhaps April starts to prepare people for the survey.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Good. So thank you, Tricarica, for doing that one piece. And then we'll just look again at. Go ahead. Did you have a question?
Yeah, Gretchen, could you send me examples of what we've done in the past so I kind of have an idea what I'm aiming for as well, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry, Kathy.
No, it's okay. So the final thing is member remarks and announcements. I did just want to briefly mention Gretchen had attached the commissioner work agreements, I think, to the meeting notice, because we had raised that, we covered that last time and raised that at the last full commission meeting. And Angela mentioned that those were kind of on hold because of COVID and the pandemic and all of that. But just so people are aware of what they were. And this, I think Gretchen mentioned, these are, it's not recent. I think it was from a few years ago with probably different commissioners. It was 4 hours a month, 5 events a year. And as we're getting into spring and summer weather, I'm suspecting there might be more events that we would have an opportunity to attend and sit at a table. So maybe keep those in mind too, so we can get those on the schedule.
Yeah, there's one coming up. I'm gonna send it to Gretchen right now, otherwise I'm gonna forget. It's the Radical Free Market. So like Salem Free Fridge attends that, and it's just a place where any community member can come and like put stuff out that they want to get rid of, like as opposed to going to Goodwill, you would bring like, clothes that you don't need that are in good shape or whatever. And that's coming up on Sunday, March 20th at River Road Community Park. And actually, that's all it is that I have, Gretchen. It's just a picture. It says Sunday, March 20th, Radical Free Market, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. at River Road Community Park. And I've seen other like nonprofit and resource-based organizations just set up a table with information to talk to people. So that would be a great way to just have a table. It's really casual. People bring food, people bring samples. Like, it's a lot of fun, just to let people know that we're there and we care and all that good stuff.
You said that was March 20th?
Yes, Sunday, March 20th.
That's the week I'll be out of town, but
Oh, bummer.
but it'd be good. And do you know how often they do that? I know they had one. They've had a few that I've heard of.
Yeah, I think they do it monthly. That's what they did
Okay.
last year. This is the first one of this year. So, I can find out from the people there. I'm planning on going regardless. So
Okay.
maybe we could get some people together. We can talk about it at the Greater Commission as well as an opportunity to table.
Opportunity for people to get out there, definitely.
I remember at the last meeting, Angelo suggested if we are aware of opportunities, I could send them out. And then I think he just didn't want anybody to feel obligated if they weren't comfortable. But I could certainly send that out and see if folks are interested in signing up. I'm also out of town then, but I could get the tabling supplies to someone in advance to bring it.
Yeah, that'd be great, Gretchen. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be great. Does anyone have any other remarks or announcements or anything they want to bring up tonight? Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all for your work that you're doing, and we will see you, I think, in a couple of weeks for the full commission meeting. So,
Very
all
good.
right.
Kathy, thank you for chairing. I appreciate you stepping into the role. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Everybody have a good